Welcome to Sagenheim and the reawakening of the Thidrekssaga, where in the last episode you've heard about Attila's hall in Soest, a mysterious bear skin, and the sword Mimung. So onwards now, to something new from days of old. King Erminrek sent his men north from Rome to his kinsman, King Thidrek. They bore the message that Thidrek should come with all of his army and give him aid against an earl named Rimstein. And this earl was a tributary vassal under King Erminrek, and he refused to pay his tribute. He resided in the castle called Gerimsheim, and Thidrek was eager to do this. And when Vidga heard this news, he went to Heimir and asked him to give him his sword Mimung. Heimir said that he would lend him Mimung for this expedition if he would give it back to him when they returned. And Vidga said that it would be as he wished. King Thidrek rode out of Bern with 500 men, all very brave, and along with them all of his warriors, whom he called his equals, and they rode to meet King Erminrek, his kinsman. King Erminrek had already arrived with 6,000 men and good knights. The two kings now rode into the earl's domain, and burned wherever they went, and they killed many men. Then they came before the castle Gerimsheim, and burned down all the buildings near the castle. They then set up their tents and camps out around the place. King Erminrek lay before one wall with his army, and King Thidrek lay with his army before the other gate. And they remained there for 2 months, during which they were not able to win the castle. One evening, Earl Rimstein rode out of his castle with 6 knights to spy, and he moved secretly around the army of his enemies to see how things stood, and whether they were armed or not. And before this, he had his army prepare their weapons inside the walls, and wait prepared for battle, if the others were not prepared. And when the Earl set out to return to his castle, after having found out what he wanted to know, he came between the castle and the tents, and a man rode toward him. It was the man King Thidrek had assigned to keep watch on his side, and it was the strong Vidga. 6 knights rode toward him, and he rode at them as hard as he could. They could now see clearly that he was their enemy, and they spoke to him, and they struck at each other from their horses. Vidga defended himself skillfully and bravely, and now he struck with all his strength at the Earl himself, and split his helmet, and head, and torso, so that his sword came to stop at his belt. He fell dead to the ground, and his men were startled at the fall of the Earl, and they rode back to the castle with heavy news. Vidga spurred his horse Skemming, and rode back towards his comrades. He let his horse gallop, and he rode proudly to the tents. King Thidrek and all his men stood out before their tent, and thought that Vidga must have carried out some deed deserving of fame. Heimir spoke. Vidga is riding proudly, and it is obvious that, if he has carried out the deed worthy of fame, he will think himself a better man than before. And they welcomed Vidga warmly, and asked him the news. He said that they would not have to remain there any longer on account of the Earl, because he is now dead. And they asked who had accomplished that. Vidga answered, I saw the man who felled him dead to the earth from his horse." And Heimir spoke. "You do not need to conceal it from us. We know that you did it. But you need boast little of it, because it wasn't much of a deed to kill him. A woman could have done it just as well, because he was so old that he was absolutely decrepit." And when Vidga heard that, he became extremely angry. He sprang at Heimir, grasped his sword Mimung, which he was wearing, by the theft and pulled it from the sheath. He took Nagelring and cast it before Heimir's feet and challenged him to a duel. Heimir did not cause any delay. King Thidrek sprang between them and along with him other comrades, and said that they did not wish to see the two men fight under any circumstances. They bade Vidga to remain quiet, but he took it badly and said that he intended that Mimung should not return to his belt until it had gone between Heimir's head and torso. He said that there was enough cause between them and that Heimir had long insulted him. He said that it would make no difference whether they fought out their conflict now or later. It would have to be resolved. And Vidga said that it had not been a manly deed at the time when he had fallen on the field in the battle against King Osantrix, to have left him there when Heimir could easily have rescued him, if he had wanted to, so that Vidga would not have fallen into the hands of his enemies at the time. And he stole my sword from me, just as if he had been my enemy, rather than my comrade. And King Thidrek answered that this was not proper behavior, and told Heimir that he should give in, since he had started it. And then Heimir swore an oath that he had said all of this as a joke with his comrade. Vidga accepted this settlement very unwillingly, and they ended their conflict in this way. Now King Thidrek spoke to Vidga. "Good friend, did you kill the Earl?" "Yes, sir," he said. "He rode at me with his 5 knights first, and he had the worst part of our dealings. The others fled the scene." And King Thidrek replied, "You are certainly a valiant fellow, and a man of great distinction. Receive my thanks and our friendship." When the morning arrived, Thidrek had his kinsman Erminrek informed of the fall of the Earl. And as soon as he was truly informed of this, he had all of his horns blown, and had all his knights armed. They then set out for the castle with war songs, and with crossbows, Greek fire, and all kinds of machinery. The defenders saw no other choice than to put their case into the hands of the king, and to give up the castle. The king gave them truce for their lives and their money. And when he had taken the place himself, he placed his kinsman Valtari of Vaskerstein in charge as chieftain. The kings now rode home and ruled in their own kingdoms. King Erminrek in Rome, and King Thidrek with his champions in Bern. There passed now some time, during which Thidrek sat at home in peace. He was seldom able to boast of such periods during his life. He felt happiest in his mind when he was involved in some great deed, in battle, or in single combat, or whatever might arise. And thus this short little episode is already at its end. But there's more. If you listen to the next one, like King Sigmund, Artwin's betrayal, and the birth of the famous hero Sigurd. So stay tuned, and thanks for tuning in. And see you again next time. back here at Sagenheim.